Okay, some of the places, I'm going to run out of fingers and toes, by the way. Some of the places I've lived. So I was born in Columbus, Georgia, West Point, New York, Fort Rucker, Alabama. We lived in Fort Rucker twice. We lived in Texas, Fort Hood, Texas, Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, Grafenwehr, Germany, Frankfurt, Germany, Fliegerhorst, Germany, Carlisle, Pennsylvania, Fort Bragg, North Carolina, Cary, North Carolina, Fort Campbell, trying to think of what, the other states, Kentucky, Florida, Massachusetts, Maine. I've lived in Pennsylvania the longest. I think it's funny because explaining what growing up military is like is so different for so many people. And I think you don't really know that it's different until you get older. But, there were signs that the way that I was growing up was very different than a lot of the kids around me. My dad was an officer in the Army. He started out in tanks. And then he went through officer candidate school, and then he got into flying. And so my dad actually flew helicopters for a long time. And we moved quite a bit, but I think that there are a few factors in growing up military that turn it into a huge positive. My parents are both very positive people. My parents adore each other, have always gotten along. They communicate really well. Next year is their 50th wedding anniversary. But I think that foundation has to be solid in order for military life to be considered an adventure. And I think too that my sister leans a little bit more toward introvert. I am clearly an extrovert. So I think that all of the factors that were in my chemical makeup turned it into just this grand, amazing adventure. My feedback on growing up military is always so positive because I had such a great time. But I never ever want to ignore or disengage from the fact that I saw kids struggle. I acknowledge that, and I understand that I am very lucky and have talked to adults who grew up in a military family that it wasn't their favorite thing. When your dad gets deployed for months at a time, and folks that are my age or around my age, if your father was deployed, we didn't have internet growing up. We didn't have cell phones. And so your dad or mom was just gone. And how do you handle that as a little kid? And so when you're little, you turn to your parents, or you turn to your friends, or you turn to however it is that you're wired to handle a situation like that. And it can be really tough. Luckily, I had a mom that was open to talking about it, had a school that was really supportive when my dad was deployed in Desert Storm. But I watched kids when your parent is deployed, and it can either wreck you or it can give you a lot of great tools to handle that kind of stress in your life. And I was very lucky in the fact that I always had a lot of support, and I always had a mother that was like, your face looks funny, talk to me, what's going on? And so I loved that, and I can't imagine growing up any other way. The hardest thing about growing up military, I think, is probably one of the more obvious ones, leaving friends. That's tough. It's funny because at the time, especially depending on your age, it feels world-ending. I mean, my best friend is here and I have to go, and the injustice of it all. But they wind up being your friends for life, and you're good friends. No matter if you grew up in a hometown or if you grew up in a military family, you had to move for other reasons. Your real friends are with you forever. And so I have friends that, I've made, and leaving them was like losing a limb. But I mean, those are the closest friends that I have, other than my family. And so that was probably the hardest at the time. You have to leave people. The best part was reinvention is such a beautiful thing. And so if you are at a place in your life or in your career where you think, maybe I should try something different, you're not really sure. I mean, what if that opportunity presented itself on a regular basis? And so I would move to one place and everybody would say, oh, well, what do you like? And I would say, well, I love to play soccer. And they'd be like, we don't have soccer here. Okay, so I'm not going to be a soccer player here. Let's try something else. Do you guys have volleyball? Sure, I'll play volleyball. And so it was an opportunity to kind of reinvent all the time and try so many different things. And if they worked, great, keep them. If they don't, well, we're moving in a year, so don't worry about it. It won't be part of your permanent repertoire anyway. But I think that I would go into interview mode when I would go to a new school. Did you always live here? What's your favorite subject at this school? Well, which side of the school has the best lockers? And, you know, at break, where does everybody hang out? And who's trouble? Like, are there specific names that come to mind that I should stay away from? Or, you know, after school, what does everybody do? What sport gets the most funding here? Like, I would go into interview mode, and it, without realizing it would kind of weed out the personality types that couldn't handle that kind of intensity. But it would also give me a crash course in what direction I wanted to go. So my advice for military families, don't forget to enjoy wherever you are. No matter where you get assigned, there's always something great that you wouldn't get to experience if you hadn't been assigned right there. You're right in that spot for a reason. And it doesn't not every duty assignment has to be something monumental, but enjoy it. I mean, who else gets to travel around the world and experience the things that we've seen? And just enjoy the adventure. It can at times feel heavier than others, but it's an opportunity. I mean, being assigned in Germany and growing up, having a lot of my childhood in Germany was such a gift. And I mean, I still talk about it like I was there yesterday because it had such an impact. And we didn't just go to Oktoberfest and experience the Glühwein and see all of the beautiful parts. My parents made it a mission to show us the history also. We went to a couple of the concentration camp sites, and we went to East Berlin when there was one. And it was important to them to not just show us the fun touristy spots, which are amazing, but to make sure that we saw the history of wherever we were to. And so, whether you're stationed overseas, you're stationed stateside, or wherever you're stationed, you have to explore it. And that makes a big part of who you are forever. That lifestyle is something that I'm so, so grateful for. And I think that it really helped me determine who I am and the kind of person that I want to be and the kind of people that I like to support. And, I love hard. And, when I meet people for the first time, I still go through a Q&A. What's your name? What's your middle name? Do you have a middle name? Do you live around here? And yeah, to introverts, it's like, but I mean, that's just me.
I think overall, though, it was just an exceptionally wonderful life.
I think so too. And I think, it's such a good example of how adaptable humans are.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can obviously we all grow up in different ways, but what I think probably the most valuable lesson that growing up military taught me was accepting things that aren't my norm. Did you have any idea that you were going to have the spastic children that you did?
I couldn't have been any more thrilled.
So everything we've done, I've been in 2 wars, a rock fight, your mom has moved 30, 40 times, et cetera, et cetera. We have done nothing that comes close to the value of our children.
That's nice.